Kaivalya Navaneeta. Section 2. Doubts cleared away. Master, just as men dig a hole, gently plant a long post in it, fill in earth, and ram it in to fix it firmly, so too I take to clearing away doubts that your mind, which has realized the self as being the supreme consciousness, may remain unshaken. The disciple, pure-minded and self-realized, clung to his master from the time of wrong identification of the self with the body to the moment of unmolded, unembodied liberation, like a young monkey clings to its mother. Finding that the loving disciple keeps to him like his shadow, the master asks him, "Are you able to stay unshaken as a mere witness? Have all your doubts disappeared? Or does the sense of differentiation creep in at times? Tell me your condition." On this, the disciple said, "Master, dare the phantoms of differentiation, which can roam about only in the darkness of ignorance, in the wilderness of worldly life, appear to the inner vision in the broad daylight of wisdom, after the sun of your teaching has risen over the summit of your grace. Even after the devil is exorcised, just as the person who was possessed is further protected by a talisman against any return of the trouble, so also, though my ignorance has already been dispelled by your teaching, yet, Master, I seek more from you, that I may be firmly fixed in the self. You said, know it from the scriptures, that the self is Brahman. Non-dual Brahman cannot be reached by speech, study, or discussion. It must be realized in the heart. Self-shining Brahman cannot be reached by the miserable mind. Please clear what seems to be the contraction of these two statements." Master, as Brahman is neither an object of the senses, nor an object of inference, and as there is no second to it, it is beyond direct perception, inference, or analogy. Also, know that being free from attributes, it cannot be expressed by words. The Vedas, which declare that Brahman lies beyond words, also signify it by the text that thou art. If you ask which is right, know that both are right, for the Vedas can never be untrue. A girl says, not he, of all others, and remains shy and silent when her lover is pointed out. In the same way, the Vedas clearly deny when is not Brahman, not this, and indicate Brahman by silence. Having answered the first part of your question, I proceed to answer the second. Heart governs the external senses. Its faculties operate internally and externally as intellect and mind. As your face is seen reflected in a mirror, so the image of pure consciousness is seen in intellect. Along with this, the mind proceeds to function, and this is called knowledge. As molten metal takes the shape of the mold into which it is poured, so the mind assumes the shape of the objects, and they are revealed by the reflected light. Without eyesight and light, an object in darkness cannot be discovered. The aid of a burning lamp and clear eyesight are required to discover an object in darkness. But to see the sun, eyesight alone will do. To see the manifest universe, both moded mind and reflected consciousness are necessary. But to realize the reality, moded mind, eager for realization, will alone serve. The union of the moded mind and the reflected self is called the mind. Brahman can be reached by the mind for the reason that the mode of mind directed to itself is necessary for realization. Brahman cannot be reached by that part of the mind which is reflected consciousness. Thus, reconciling the meaning, be free from doubt. Disciple: Master, I have understood your teaching so far. Please let me ask you another question. Free from movement, unbroken, perfect, and transformed into that, is not such a state of mind called Samadhi Yoga or union in peace? How can this mind, always moving like a swing and raising up several worlds in a trice, be stilled so that it may remain steady in the self, like a flame protected from droughts. Master, the active mind is composed of 3 gunas. When one of them is uppermost, the other 2 lie covert. With Sattva Guna, divine qualities manifest. With Rajoguna, tendencies pertaining to the world, the body and the Shastras manifest. With Tamoguna, the evil nature manifests. Sattva is the very nature of the mind, whereas the other 2 qualities are more adjuncts and can therefore be banished from it. If one holds steadily to one's divineness, Rajas and Tamas will get strangled, so that the internal stresses and the external manifold disappear. When this happens, your mind shines forth untainted and becomes motionless and subtle like the ether. And then it naturally becomes one with Brahman, which is already so, and remains in undifferentiated peace, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. When one stainless mirror is placed in front of another similar one, the reflecting surfaces will be one undistinguishable whole. Similarly, when the mind which is clear has become one with the infinite, Sat, Chit, Ananda, Brahman, and remains untainted, how can there be the manifold or movements in the mind? Tell me. Disciple, how then can the wise, liberated while alive, exhaust their prarabdha if their mind has lost itself in Brahman and become one with it? Is it not done only by experiencing its results? Such experience would certainly require the mind. There cannot be any kind of experience in the absence of the mind. If the mind persists, how can it be said to be liberated? I am confused on this point. Be pleased to clear this doubt of mine, for I cannot be liberated unless all my doubts are cleared away. Master, the annihilation of the mind is of 2 grades, namely, of the mind pattern and of the mind itself. The former applies to sages liberated while alive, the latter to disembodied sages. Elimination of Rajas and Tamas, leaving Sattva alone, is the dissolution of the pattern of the mind. When Sattva vanishes along with the subtle body, the mind itself is said to have perished too. Sattva is pure and forms the very nature of the mind. When Rajas and Tamas, which give the pattern to it, are destroyed, by proper practice, the identity of the term mind is lost. For in such a state, the sages will partake of what comes unsolicited to them, not think of the past or future, nor exult in joy or lament in sorrow, getting over their doership and becoming non-doers, witnessing the mental modes and the three states, waking, dream, dreamless sleep. They can remain liberated at the same time as they pass through prarabdha. There is no contradiction in it. You need have no doubts on this point. On hearing that the whole period of activity is also the state of peace, you may object saying, does not action denote changing mind? And on such change, does not peace slip away? The state of the sage is like that of a girl who never ceases to thrill with love for her paramour even while she attends to her duties at home. Disciple, should the sage, liberated while alive, who has transcended the incidents of the body, gross and subtle bodies, lost the sense of doership and the whole individuality, and become one with Brahman, be said to be the experiencer of prarabdha? He must also be the doer. Can there be experience to a perfect non-doer? Master, hear their greatness as perfect doers, perfect enjoyers, and perfect renouncers. As a hill of lodestone neither moves of itself nor puts things in motion, and yet pieces of iron orient themselves towards it. I neither act by myself nor actuate others, and yet the whole world is active before me. Like the sun, I remain an unconcerned witness of all the functions of the body, senses, etc., and also of the state of peace resulting from the merging of the mind in Brahman. One possessed of this firm experience is the perfect doer. The perfect enjoyer is he who partakes of anything that comes his way without discriminating whether it be tasty or not, clean or unclean, healthy or unhealthy, like a blazing fire, consuming all that lies in its way. He whose mind is crystal clear, unaffected by passing phases, great or small, good or bad, his own or others, is the perfect renouncer. A liberated sage is strictly an exemplar of these three virtues united. Disciple, how can it be reckoned that the task of the sage is finished if by prarabdha he lives on in a body, acting and teaching to suit others desirous of liberation? Master, occupations of people are of three kinds: those pertaining to the present life, and those pertaining to hereafter are only for the ignorant possessed by desire for enjoyment, sense of ownership, and attachment to the body. Only those who long for deliverance, turn to the learning of the truth, etc. Is there anything to be gained by learning or other similar actions for a person who is all perfect? Disciple, it is right that they alone can practice true wisdom who have deliberately discarded the joys of life here and hereafter. Can those who have turned away from worldly activities and rituals to tread the path of liberation ever turn back to the old methods? Are not hearing, reasoning, and meditation necessary to make the mind firm? Master, they who do not know must learn the truth as taught by the scriptures and masters. Those who have doubts must engage in reasoning. Those who are in the grip of wrong knowledge must practice meditation. Can there be anything wanting for those who have become the real, ethereal being, consciousness, perfection? Disciple, can the wise also say, like the ignorant, I did, I saw, I ate, and I went? You say that they are free from wrong knowledge. Can realization of Brahman, which is real, admit of such expression? Please enlighten me on this point. Master, a person who wakes up from a dream speaks of his experiences in the dream. In the same way, the self-realized sage, though using the language of the ignorant, is not bound as the ego. A man who commits himself to the flames on the eve of his becoming an immortal god is spoken of only as a man until his body is reduced to ashes. So also the ego-free sage appears to function like others until he is disembodied. Disciple, if so, though the objects are unreal, would not the transactions associated with them cause misery? Can they bestow the bliss of knowledge? It can be felt only in their absence. Is it not necessary to be one-pointed? And if the person practices it, can he be said to have finished his task? Master, activities end when prarabdha ends. Is not practice of samadhi or worldly work an activity of the mind? Being one with the transcendent self, can he do anything different from it? Should he be practicing samadhi, he cannot be said to be established in the self. Disciple, how is it then that some of those who are established in the self and have nothing more to do practice mind-restraining meditations? Master, I have already told you that the sages liberated while alive appear to be active in many ways according to their prarabdha. Hear me further. The activities of the sage are solely for the uplift of the world. He does not stand to lose or gain anything. The Almighty, who is only the store of grace for the world, is not affected by the merit or demerit of the creation, etc. Disciple, you speak of a jnani and Ishvara as the same. How can they be so? Master, yes, Ishvara and the jnani are the same because they are free from I and mine. The jnani is himself Ishvara, the totality of the jivas, and also the cosmos. Disciple, Lord, if as you say he is all jivas when he is liberated, how can others remain bound? If the jivas are said to be diverse, he cannot be all. Master, the self which shines forth as I in all is perfect and impartite, but jivas are as diverse as the limitations formed by the ego. Look how the moon, who delights the world, is only one, whereas her reflected images are as many as there are ponds, pools, tanks, streams, cisterns, and pitchers of water. When one of them is destroyed, the image is no longer reflected, but is reabsorbed in its source, namely the moon. It cannot be so with the other reflected images. In the same manner, the jiva whose limitations are destroyed is withdrawn into its source, the self, but the other jivas are not. Disciple, how can a jnani be the same as Ishvara, who is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the lords of creation, preservation, and destruction of the universe? They can divine the thoughts of others, know the past, present, and future, and are immanent in all. I do not find even a trace of these qualities in the jnani. Master, the water in a tank and a powerful light help the whole village, whereas a pot of water and a table lamp help only the family circle in a home. Ishvara and the jnani do not differ in their jnana. However, associated with the limitations of Maya, they are spoken of as superior and inferior. Like the kings and the siddhas among men, the gods such as Narayana have some extraordinary powers like anima, etc., because of their extraordinary antecedent austerities. Although men do not possess these powers and therefore appear less, yet from the standpoint of Brahman, there is not the least difference between them. Disciple, although there have been many sages in the world who possessed these extraordinary powers like anima, minuteness, etc., you say these powers are Ishvara's own. Please clarify this. Master, know that the powers are the fruits of their devotion to the glorious Almighty Being, their austerities and practices of yoga. Disciple, Master, if these powers and deliverance are together the fruits of tapas, then all the sages should possess both, as the ancient sages did. We have known that the ancient sages had these siddhis and were also liberated at the same time. Why do not all jnanis possess such powers as well? Master, of the two types of tapas, ascetic practice, namely tapas for the fulfillment of one's desires and dispassionate tapas, the former bestows the powers desired and the latter wisdom. Each can yield its allotted fruits only. That is the law. The ancient sages had evidently performed both kinds of tapas. Janaka, Mahabali, Bhagiratha, and others got deliverance only. Did they display any siddhis? No. Some of the sages sought siddhis only. Others sought both siddhis and emancipation. These siddhis are simply for display and nothing more. They do not make for liberation. Disciple, if emancipation is the sole outcome of the realization of identity of the individual self with the universal self, how then did some of the sages who were liberated here and now exert themselves for the attainment of siddhis? Master, Prarabdha spends itself only after bestowing its fruits, to be experienced as pain or pleasure. Therefore, the siddhis gained by emancipated sages must be considered to be the results of prarabdha only. Disciple, Master, I am now free from the delusions of the mind and remain pure and clear. However, there is certainly no harm in cleaning a mirror a little more, even though it is already clean. Can the scriptures say anything that is not absolutely true? Master, how can I reconcile the two statements? The karma of any person wears away only after bestowing its fruits, and the fire of pure wisdom burns away the karma which is waiting to bear fruits later on. Master, my son, the jivas are unlimited in number, capacity, and kind, and their actions also are similarly unlimited. In 3 sections, the beneficent Vedas prescribe according to the aptitudes of seekers, with preliminary views succeeded by final conclusions, like flowers by fruits. Is it not true that sinners must suffer in the hells, can yet be saved from them by means of pious gifts, mantras, austerities, yajna, and the like? He who has faith in the saying of the Vedas that the fire of jnana burns away all karma awaiting to yield its results, attains liberation. Disciple, Master, when true wisdom can root out the karma which has been accumulated in many incarnations and liberate the person, why do even the most brilliant of men not profit by this wisdom, but fall into the rut of karma and perish? Please explain. Master, my son, those of interned mind will realize the everlasting that, like absent-minded walkers falling into a ditch, even with their eyes open. Those of outgoing mind look for the fulfillment of their desires, fall into the contemptible sea of never-ending rebirths, and cannot gain liberation. Disciple, are not the good and bad actions actuated by Ishvara? What can the jivas do who are themselves his creatures? How are they to blame? Master, these are words of illusion, worthy of fools, ignorant of the clear meaning of the scriptures. The creations of the Almighty Lord and of the individual jiva are different. The Almighty's creation is cosmic and consists of all that is mobile and immobile. The unworthy jiva's creation, which consists of attachments, passions, desires, and the like, pertains to the ego and is certainly not of the Almighty. The creation of the Almighty Lord, who functions threefold, creator, preserver, destroyer, may constitute the means for liberation, whereas those of the jivas are the maladies which cause them successive reincarnations. Liability to birth does not end for anyone, even if creation comes to an end. It only ends on the giving up of one's passions and the like. Who has ever gotten free from rebirths at the time of the dissolution of the Lord's creation? No one. Despite the persistence of time, space, and bodies, people have been liberated even here by destroying the delusion of individual creation and gaining knowledge. Therefore, bondage and illusion are clearly of the jiva's own making and not of the Lord's. There is a tree called Ashwatha, and two birds live on it. One of them, who is full of desires, enjoys the fruits, saying, "This is sweet, this is sweet." The other, who is highly esteemed, does not eat thereof. Understand this parable by which the Holy Veda describes the jiva and Ishvara. Those fools lead for disaster who, in their ignorance, attribute to God the 6 evils: lust, anger, greed, delusion, conceit, and jealousy, which are of their own making, but the wise will gain untainted deliverance who recognize the same evils to be of their own making and not God's.